My 11-year-old daughter and her friends are a bunch of murder hobos. Posted by you/rare_pattern 1989. My daughter is 11 years old and started watching Stranger Things on Netflix a while back because some of the kids in her class were talking about it. After seeing a few episodes, she came to me asking what Dungeons and Dragons really was. I am by no means an expert on the game. I've played maybe 4 sessions about 20 years ago. But I explained the basic concept to her, and she thought it sounded really cool. I found my old dice and gave them to her to mess around with. Last week, she asked if I could make a story for her and her friends to play. It sounded like a fun idea, so I obliged. Since it was Halloween, even though we don't really celebrate it in my country, I created a small Halloween campaign for the girls. In the interest of time, they had to be done in an afternoon, and I didn't have the time to browse through the entire rule set. I created simplified character sheets for them with a bunch of predefined skills and crafted an inventory for each of them with helpful items to tackle some challenges. I made a PowerPoint presentation with several images to help them visualize what was going on and where they were. I also prepared a handwritten scroll with their quest objective on it, burning the edges a bit to give it a cool look, all fun stuff. The quest itself was pretty simple. The town where the girls lived was cursed for Halloween, and if they didn't lift the curse before midnight, all the townspeople would turn into monsters. To prevent this, they needed to gather 3 ingredients from around the town and then head to the center of the haunted forest, where a witch would craft a spell to lift the curse. I had a lot of things prepared, but the one thing I didn't anticipate was how quickly my daughter and her 3 friends turned into murder hobos. The first ingredient they needed was a bag of candy. Walking around town, they found a kid who had just gone trick-or-treating. First, they asked him nicely to hand over his candy. Of course, the kid said no, so I imagined they might use some gold or intimidate him into giving it up. Instead, the girl playing the wizard noticed that I had written fireball under the spells category on her character sheet. Quietly, she asked if she could burn the kid. The other kids immediately asked, "Wait, can she?" I told them they could do whatever they imagined. So, they burned the kid and took his candy. My daughter, feeling a little remorse, explained that she took a tiny urn to carry his ashes. And, well, that set the tone for the rest of the campaign, as I could never have imagined those girls being so evil. The second ingredient was a bottle of wine, so they went to the local tavern. They first tried to steal a bottle, but when the stealth check failed, they decided to jump the barkeep and kill him to take the wine. The third ingredient was a dragon's tooth, which they could find in the house of an orcish warrior on the outskirts of town. Instead of knocking on the door, their first instinct was to try and kick it down. My daughter rolled a 1 on that check, so I told her she lost 1 health point because she hurt her foot. Next, they decided to break the window and enter the house that way. Of course, the orc wasn't happy with adventurers breaking into her home and attacked them on sight. They cast a sleep spell on her, tied her up with the rope they had, and took the tooth. They also decided her armor and axe were cool, so they stripped her and looted her house, leaving a naked, tied-up orc behind. At the edge of the forest, they encountered a ghost. The idea was for the girls to discover that the ghost was afraid of the dark and help him quell his fears by using either the light spell on the wizard's sheet or a candle from the cleric's inventory. After some discussion, they noticed the ghost's image on my PowerPoint, a ghostly figure dressed in a white cloak. "Maybe we should just set his cloak on fire," they giggled. So the ghost ran away, burning, and revealed the path to the haunted forest. The encounters in the forest didn't go as planned, either. They first encountered a group of skeletons dancing around a bonfire. The skeletons invited them to join their Halloween ritual dance, promising a reward. I had prepared music for this encounter, a song my daughter often dances to, and the girls immediately got up from the table to perform the dance. After completing it, the skeletons showed them the path deeper into the forest. However, the rogue asked why they weren't getting a proper reward. When the skeletons explained that revealing the path was the reward, the girls didn't like the answer and decided to teach them a violent lesson. Where I underestimated their desire for murder, I overestimated their intelligence. They arrived at a pond, where a water spirit gave them a riddle. Solving it would earn them a magical medallion to open a portal later in their quest. The riddle's answer was river, and I gave them multiple hints, emphasizing the water spirit. They still didn't get it, and when they were about to resort to alternative solutions, my wife, who had been listening in, yelled, "It's a river, you idiots." They giggled and happily accepted the medallion. Next, they encountered a giant crow who wanted some candy to feed her chicks. Unwilling to share, the crow was added to their fatality list. Then, the mage and cleric got trapped in a giant spider web. A giant spider attacked, and the rogue tried to free her friends by throwing her dagger. Each throw was a skill check, and she accidentally hit the cleric instead of the web. An epic battle ensued, culminating in my daughter mounting the spider and choking it with a rope. I let her roll for it, but when she succeeded, I explained that spiders have book lungs and don't breathe like mammals, so her plan didn't work. It was still a cool idea, though. They took a beating but eventually won, proudly burning the spider's corpse and carrying its ashes in another urn. Finally, they reached the magical portal. The medallion lit up, revealing a rebus puzzle. The solution was a phrase from a popular song in our country. It went over their heads until my wife glanced at it, gave them the answer, and they started singing to open the portal. Before meeting the witch, they faced a Trent protecting her. Initially, the idea was for the Trent to be persuaded by their noble deeds. However, given their chaotic actions, I changed it so the Trent demanded an explanation. The girls concluded, "He's made of wood, so we can set him on fire." Since we were running out of time, I played along, and a single fireball reduced the Trent to ash. The confrontation with the witch was brief. She crafted the spell they needed to lift the curse. The girls returned to town, where they were celebrated as heroes for their bravery. My daughter later told me that everyone had a great time and laughed about it all day at school. She asked if I could create another campaign for them. Next time, I'll definitely incorporate consequences for their actions and make an action-packed story with more battles. For now, I'll start by rereading the rules to make the next campaign even better. Update 2 months later. So, a while ago, I posted about introducing my daughter and her friends to D&D and how they turned into full-on murder hobos. After their first game, the girls were over the moon and eager to play again. Word spread around their classroom, and suddenly, instead of 4 players, I had 6 girls to manage in my campaign. With my busy work schedule and the holidays, I didn't have as much time to prepare as I did for the first game. Still, I had a good idea of what I wanted to do and had incorporated the advice I got here to create a more action-packed experience for the group. However, things didn't go as planned, thanks to something I hadn't anticipated: another dad joining the party. The day before the game, my wife got a call from the father of one of the girls. He'd heard about the game from his daughter and was excited to join since he used to play D&D a lot when he was younger. I already knew him from school drop-offs, but our interactions had always been lukewarm. He's a single dad who, as my wife has mentioned multiple times, clearly has a thing for her. They work at the same company, and while he's not the type to act on it, he's shy and socially awkward in many ways. When I was younger, I was a huge geek, but marriage, kids, career growth, and new interests had watered that down over the years. While we're the same age, he's just as into geek culture as he was 20 years ago, and every conversation we've had revolves around the Minecraft world he's been building for years. Once the game started, he went into full hardcore role-playing mode and completely hijacked the session, much to the girls' dismay. I had prepared predefined character sheets and classes for the girls, complete with detailed explanations of their abilities, just like last time. The returning players started in the same inn where they'd previously murdered a boy on Halloween, with his mother now looking for him. They giggled about the situation, explaining it to the new girls. The plan was for the session to begin with a bar brawl against some drunken dwarves. Tensions were high, and some of the girls were already considering using a fireball, but the druid dad stepped in. He diffused the situation by charming the dwarves, buying them beer, passing all the charisma checks, and peacefully settling things. Since my plan had been for the girls to find a quest-related note on one of the dwarves' mangled bodies, I had to improvise and introduced a mailman to deliver the note instead. The note invited them to meet someone at a house near the old watermill, promising a great adventure and information about a hidden treasure. Along the way, they were attacked by wolves, time for their first combat. Except, the druid convinced the wolves they meant no harm, bypassing the fight entirely. When they reached the house, the girls wanted to barge in, but the druid insisted on scouting for traps and suspicious activity. He found a bird to ask for information about the house. Meanwhile, the girls started getting bored and bickering among themselves. One girl said she threw a rock at another's head. When they found the front door locked, they climbed onto the roof, and one girl pushed another down the chimney. Inside, the druid took control again, methodically having the girls detect magic, traps, and hidden doors in every room. The slow pace frustrated the girls, who started losing interest. To make matters worse, when they fought among themselves, the druid gave a speech about teamwork. After painstakingly exploring the house, they found the book they were looking for. The next part of the journey involved crossing a hot wasteland, but instead of picking up the pace, the druid had them stockpile water and food for the trip. I tried to speed things up with an ambush by orcs seeking revenge for being mistreated in the previous campaign. But instead of engaging in combat, the druid demanded backstory, expressed empathy, and tried to resolve things peacefully. When more orcs arrived, he convinced the party to surrender and get captured. I had to come up with a dungeon storyline on the fly, but by that point, the girls had checked out. It was hard enough involving all 6 players, but with the druid monopolizing the game, the energy in the room died completely. The campaign ended abruptly, and everyone went home. Unlike the first session, there was no laughter or excitement. My daughter didn't even mention the game afterward, which was a stark contrast to the last time. I suspect that the druid dad inadvertently killed their interest in role-playing games altogether. What the girls wanted was a fun, action-packed adventure of kicking tail and taking names, but his complex role-playing and methodical gameplay completely derailed the experience. Op in the comments. I am just going to check with my daughter and see what she wants to do. With any other dad, it wouldn't have been much of an issue. You grab a beer out of the fridge during the toilet break, and it's solved in 30 seconds. I have never had any type of meaningful conversation with this guy, and unfortunately, out of all the girls at the table, can you guess which one has been best friends with mine for practically all their lives? I also don't want to be the one who accidentally causes a rift between those two.